Welcome to Speak Out, Stand Out by Green Communications, where we're learning how to help our kids become better communicators. We believe our voices are the strongest asset we have, and our mission is to empower the next generation to use their voices to make a difference in the world around them. Whether you are a parent, an educator, or are just invested in today's youth, we hope this podcast will help you build confidence in our future, one voice at a time. Welcome back to Speak Out, Stand Out. I'm Elizabeth Green, and today's guest is Lyles Reagan. Laura is a sociologist, a youth development researcher, parent and teen communications coach, and an award-winning author of How to Raise Respectful Parents. A unique twist on the name. Got my attention right there for sure. She's also the founder and CEO of Heart to Heart Parents, which is a parent and teen coaching resource service. But she believes her real accomplishment is mothering and launching two awesome, powerful young women who are making their way in the world. And of course, that is an amazing accomplishment. So, Laura, we are so glad to have you here today. Laura's going to be sharing with us about how to inoculate our teens against the teen mental health crisis from a sociological perspective. So a lot to dive in today. Laura, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks so much, Elizabeth, for having me and for having this platform for us. It's just wonderful that we can create a sense of community even online, right?
Right, absolutely. And the goal, of course, is always to help parents at home and caregivers build communication skills in their kids. And oftentimes that starts with our own communication skills. And it is sometimes difficult to have conversations about some of these things. So let's just dive right in. I mean, and let me just say too, even if you are not a parent of teens yet, this is still a really important conversation for you to hear now, because things are not getting better anytime soon, right? It is very likely that this will be something that you will be faced with at some point. So even if your kiddos are still little, it's going to be worthwhile. So Laura, let's start the teen mental health crisis. We hear that phrase a lot. Are we hearing it a lot because it is getting worse, or are we just becoming more aware of it? What are your thoughts on that?
No, I do believe that the research is right on, that it is getting worse, and that kids are identifying themselves as having crisis issues and parents are identifying themselves as having crisis issues. And I want to first, do this disclaimer caveat. I am not a therapist. I'm not a psychologist. I have worked in mental health, right, as a case manager before and as a substance abuse counselor. So I do have that perspective, but I'm coming at it from the sociological side, which means the social side. If psychology focuses on the individual, sociology focuses on the group dynamics and what that social phenomena is doing to influence kids. And we know that in times of great social change, and hello, that's where we are today, right?
Absolutely.
With major institutional change and distrust in institutions, we know in times of great social change that we see these struggles because kids don't have a quote unquote society to attach to right now. They're having to create their own. And you'll hear a lot of parents and psychologists bemoan social media, and rightfully so. But there is a need for kids to create community. They need that, right. And they're not getting the same messaging from parents as they did, back 30, 40 years as they did from church, from home, from school, from neighbors. Everybody was speaking the same messaging because there was social cohesion. And right now, there's not social cohesion. We're in a time of change and flux. And so I'm not saying that there's not a reason to seek mental health professionals. There is. I'm simply saying that there's also another part of it, and that's the social societal side. And what can we as parents do to take action to create this sense of support underneath our teens? And even our kids, because the mental health crisis is really even affecting 8 and 9-year-olds. Can you believe it? That we're seeing kids, have suicidal thoughts and gestures and even take their own lives. So it's a really scary time. And rather than, put all the blame on social media or put all the blame on, working parents, let's look at the societal changes that are going on and the lack of supports that we have, even as parents. Used to, in tribal times, we could rely on the neighbors helping correct your kids or helping nurture your kids when they were skin knees. there was a sense of community around kids that they may not have right now.
It's like as our world has gotten bigger individually, because we have access now to people from all over the world that we didn't before, it's also like it's done the opposite, and our world has gotten smaller for that reason. That, we might have friends from around the world, but we don't know our neighbors' names or things like that, And so I'm sure that affects our children as well in a way that didn't affect us. So
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, so how do we support our kids? How do we prevent them from ever even getting to issues where they're really suffering from mental health to start?
Right. First of all, there's, mental illness does exist in families, and probably 1 in 4 of us has an alcoholic or a mentally ill person in our extended family. So I want to normalize that and normalize asking for help when that is the issue. Mm-hmm. However, we're seeing kids, talk about suicidal ideation and problems and anxiety and depression, even when they don't have that mental health background. So that's why we as sociologists and parent coaches are hollering a little bit, because there's a larger picture going on. And I really appreciate the question of what is it that we as parents can do, because we're not powerless and we don't have to ride the wave of social trends before we help our teens find what they need. And I speak teens because that's my area of expertise. But like we just shared, it can be tweens and younger children as well. So one of the big things I want to encourage us as parents to do is have this conversation early. What if you felt like you couldn't talk to me, or you were afraid of getting in trouble? Who would you go to for help? Who would that be? And, usually the kid will name their best friend. Okay, but your best friend is your age and they might not know how to ask for help in different ways. Who else would you go to? And when you sanction those relationships as of mentors in your teen's life, it might be a coach, it might be a trusted teacher, but I would caution about being careful with the teacher, because teachers change regularly. Right. And even though they're wonderful, they can really make an impact in kids' lives. They're not always the consistent, reliable source of ongoing support for the longevity of an adolescence, right? So you want to sanction somebody that's a mentor in their lives. And that could be an extended family member. It could be a kinship relationship. My girls had an adopted family member that we had in our lives, and she was amazing. She was 10 years older than my oldest daughter, and she really played that role, to do the boyfriend talks and the, maybe you could save up money for that. Or here's what I think your mom might say about that. I trusted her. We had the similar value system. So sanctioning, and when I say sanctioning, I mean talking about who that person might be, and then asking that open-ended question often. Who would you go to if I wasn't available, or mm-hmm. I was, out on a business trip and you needed some immediate help? Who would that person be?
Or if they just weren't comfortable coming to us in some situations, right? Like you said earlier, maybe fear that they're going to get in trouble or things like that. So I can definitely see the benefit of having this person in their lives. So let's say they've identified the person that they feel like they trust, and you feel like, yes, this would be a great person. Do you talk to that person? Do you reach out and say, hey, just so you know, my child is going to maybe lean on you?
I said, you are the go-to when it's not me, and are you comfortable with that? And I want you to be able to respect confidentiality, unless you felt there was a self-harm issue, or a medical issue, experimentation with alcohol or drugs, then I would want you to break that confidence so that we could, get help. Not so somebody would be in trouble, but just so that we could get help.
Right. And so it's okay for them to have somebody that they're talking to that's not sharing these things with us.
I think
that's important.
I really do think it's essential, because how else do you learn boundaries unless you're, experimenting with that early?
Right. And that's so hard, I think, as parents. I mean, one of the biggest challenges I think I face as a mother is learning or not learning, but forcing myself to let my kids learn their own lessons, or
Right.
if something's wrong, I want to know, I want to try to fix it. And that's really hard as a parent. But it is comforting then to think that if I can tell something's wrong with them, that they're not just stewing on it on their own, that if they're not comfortable coming to me, that they have somebody. I think that's a fantastic idea. This might be a more difficult question, and I'm sure this is going to be very individualistic, but what if you don't feel like you have anybody in your world? If maybe
Right.
you're a family that has moved around a lot, you don't have anybody, you're not close with your extended family. What do you do then?
Right. Or you're even distrustful of your extended family.
Yeah.
Many of us grew up in less than ideal homes with authoritarian models. So it's not a relational kind of parenting. And so we wouldn't necessarily want our kids to invest in those relationships. And some of
Hmm.
us are recovering. I know that's part of my story. We had family alcoholism as part of, our lives. And,
Hmm.
we had to seek assistance for that and recovery. And I myself am 21 years sober. So,
Oh, wow.
there's some folks that, it's okay. You don't talk to them. I feel comfortable with that aunt or uncle, I get it. But identifying who that would be, because we all need those support networks. And if we don't have that, I did spend a period of my parenting, particularly during my girls' adolescence, as a single parent. And sometimes you're just so busy making a living and, figuring out the next steps that you just don't have those supports in place. And I would encourage you to look for that,
Yeah.
and talk to your teens about that. How would you discern? And these are where your open-ended questions come up. How would you know somebody was trustworthy? And what a wonderful conversation to have with your tweens and teens, right? It's what a
Right.
protective conversation is. Who do you trust in your inner circle to talk to? And it might be a teacher, it might be a counselor at school. It might be somebody at church. It might be a neighbor, a coach. So there are probably people that are willing to connect with your kids. We just haven't thought through that or had the time and energy to invest in that. And
Right.
rather than guilt yourself about, oh my God, here's another thing I need to do, to protect my kid is make that a co-created conversation and solution, because it can really be ripe with teaching and help, and make it a safe thing to discuss. Who do we trust in our inner world?
Yeah. I think this is eye-opening for me, because a lot of what we talk about is building strong communication skills with our kids now, so that they do always feel comfortable to open up to us. But you're right. We just might not be around sometime when they need to talk to
Yeah.
somebody. So I had
Well,
never personally thought
and
about
that's
this
part
before.
of this social change again, right? Is that we lay so much on the mother and father, and we don't
Hmm.
have the extended families around us, and we don't have a community of support around us. And school is fast paced and always changes. I know the Montessori model is you stick with a kid for 3 years, right? There's an early elementary, and then there's an upper elementary, and then there's a junior high. So there's more time to invest in these kinds of relationships. Truthfully, I would love everybody in the world to be able to have that opportunity, educationally, but we need to think about how we're constructing our relationships. We do have a conscious decision making ability here that we're probably not exercising.
Yeah.
And it's something our kids desperately need. I believe they're crying for it.
Yeah. Well, another thing you mentioned when you talk about is that's step one, right? Finding a support network for ourselves and for our children.
Yes.
But you also talk about developing rites of passage. What does this mean in the world of
Right.
teen mental health?
When, again, I don't want to idealize tribal times, but I want to use it as an example, right? Is we provided these rites of passages for tweens and teens early on. It's been part of humanity and the developmental growth process forever. And we're at a stage in societal change where we're just not doing that. And no wonder kids are looking to the internet for, who am I? As they answer these questions of identity, because we're not providing it. You could go make your first kill in tribal times and you were a man. You could get your period and you were a woman. You could care for other children in the tribe and you had a special role because you were seen as older than and could take on more responsibility. So we need to identify what those things are in our teens' lives and what they look like and what we can co-create with them that will help them feel like they're making developmental progress. Think about it. Our frontal cortex does not develop. The prefrontal cortex doesn't develop until we're fully 25 or 28. So that makes adolescence crazy long, you know? And what? You're not fully adult and you don't have responsibilities and you haven't achieved anything until you graduate college and get your first job and apartment? Really? You know, that's the milestone we're going to set. So we need to think about what are some stair step things we can do that we can celebrate, that we can say, yay, you did this. And that kids know where the end point is. I'm all for the kindergarten graduation and making that a big deal because it's the beginning of these rites of passages, right? And kids that struggle in school may not feel good about graduation at all, even if they do it, because school didn't work for them really well. So what is their rite of passage? What is their sense of achievement? My youngest daughter is an equine professional now. She went to equine college. And one of the big achievements in her life was to own her own business, to teach riding lessons and to get paychecks from adults, you know, for these riding lessons. And wow, you know, what an entrepreneur you are. And I'm so proud of you. And she really has confidence now as she enters, you know, a regular college and the workplace because she had a small business when she was 16, you know?
Oh, wow. She did this as a teenager, not as an adult. Wow. Exactly. Okay. That's great.
Yeah. And, you know, it was small and but she paid for her horse's care and hay through that, you know? And allowing our kids the responsibility to make the choices for them that fit their achievement and their trajectory is really, really important. I know that when my daughters went to the movies and passed that magical age of being 12 and 13 and got to pay the adult price, you know, that was a big deal for them. I was like, what? We have to pay more. What is your problem? But I got it. As a sociologist, I got it because it was, again, another rite of passage. I have achieved something, you know, because we can't wait till we're 28 to celebrate the development. So it'll look different for your different teen, but you want to shine a big old light and throw a mini parade because they developed in a certain way for them that works for them. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. And you, one thing that you just talked about with your daughter having a job, my 10-year-old has a job taking out trash cans for our neighbors. So he takes them out on trash day and then puts them back up. And, it's something that he has really taken a lot of responsibility in. And lately I've noticed a lot of pride as well. And he enjoys sharing with people that he has a job and he makes his own money and he can choose what he wants to spend it on.
Exactly.
And I was really just thinking about this as a way for him to earn some money and learn financial, you know, responsibility, but never looked at it before. Right.
Yeah, it's a powerful thing for them because it's what we call in sociology anticipatory socialization. Think about it with the med students. You know, they put on the white coat and they go with the doctors to do rounds and they take notes and they ask the intake questions of the patients. That's anticipatory socialization. And if we want kids to be responsible adults, we got to do a lot of that along the way, right? And rites of passage is a great way to feel good about what you're achieving, you know, in the normal developmental process.
Yeah.
And it's got to be more than just matriculating the next grade, you know. So think creatively about who your tween or teen is and what those achievement things will look like for them.
Yeah. And I'm glad that you said that too about not everybody's going to feel great about graduation or going to the next grade if they struggle with school. And that's not something I had considered before either, that we do put so much emphasis on that. And it might not be what's making them super happy. So looking for other ways to make them feel good.
These days, Elizabeth, in the gig economy, you know, people are earning crazy lots of money that never even majored in something specific that was attached to their job now.
Right.
You know, there's so much work for creatives. Hello, here we are.
Exactly.
And it's a wonderful wide open door for teens, but again, they don't know where the markers are. What would that look like, you know, for me to be a part of.
Yeah.
So yes, celebrating who they are and where they are and what achieving looks like to them, I think is a really helpful process.
Yeah.
And I want to say this, again, please understand I am not discrediting psychology in any way, shape, or form, but so often we think about self-esteem is us infusing kids with worth and value. But as a sociologist, we see the opposite side of that coin, which is self-esteem is what we do. We get esteem when we do something esteemable. And so, these achievement rites of passage are really part of it. Kids just don't know where they fit in society. And we put a lot of pressure on individualism and creating your own meaning, and you're worthy no matter what you do. Okay, I buy that, but where do I fit? And they're in a developmental stage where they need to identify with their peers, right? Away from family, in order to develop a healthy sense of who they are. So helping them feel good about what they're achieving is a big part of that process.
Right. All right. That makes sense. All right. Well, your one of your third suggestion here, right, is engaging the pillars of youth development. Tell me more about that. What does that mean?
Straight from youth development research. We've known for 20, 30 years what works, and somehow with the teen mental health crisis, we've forgotten that. The medical doctors, the pediatricians that are confronting this seemingly have forgotten these very basic research-based ideas, and that is kids need a sense of belonging. Who am I? And even the research talks about kids that have an incarcerated parent or have gang activity in their life. Well, guess what that gang activity was? It was creating family and social cohesion. Yeah. So if we create the story of who are your go-to people, who will always be there, this adopted parent, this foster parent, who were the people along the way that helped you? Which teachers stood out that believed in you? And we help them create this sense of belonging. They do well. They don't fall into risky behavior. So belonging is number one. Having power and influence over their lives, and that starts at 2 years old. Do you want to wear the blue shirt or the red shirt? Having a sense of autonomy and choice making, and power and influence over your life is really, really a positive piece to that. I'm trying to think about what the other one is. That's contributing to the world, having a place in the world. I got to serve when I was in youth development in a practical way, field work. I got to serve as the Boys and Girls Club director for our town, and kids that participated in our service projects, whether that was packing boxes for needy families at the food bank or building a Habitat for Humanity house, we would pick up kids on Saturday to go do these service projects, and some of them were kids out of the housing projects who would probably never see home ownership in their life until they earned it for themselves. But they would say, we're going to go help the poor kids. And the sense of contribution that they got out of doing that. And they were up at 7 a.m. on Saturday morning after going to school all week. It was really feeding this ability to contribute. So helping tweens and teens find that place to contribute. Your son, in his neighborhood has that identity as well. And that's a really powerful thing for teens.
Yeah, I think that is so important. And it's not always easy to find ways for them to be able to give back to the community. But there are certainly, if you look yes. hard, there are opportunities, and everybody feels better. And when you do something for somebody else. So bringing that,
service
home
is so vital to that process.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then let's talk communication skills. How do we develop
that's our
conscious
you and
communication
I,
skills? Exactly, right? This is so important. How do we do this?
Yeah, it really is. Again, going back to the social trends, we're moving away from authoritarian parenting because we know it doesn't work to relational parenting. And some are part of this conscious parenting movement, but regardless of what you call it, it is this interpersonal connection that we're feeding the connection with our kids first and foremost, and then we can instruct, and then we can teach, and then we can hold kids accountable, but we've captured their hearts first. And when we come down with rules first, that tends to shun and reject because one, kids might not understand the why of it. And particularly when you get to tween and teen years, they need to know the rationale, not because that's permissive parenting, but because that prepares them for the future.
Mm-hmm.
And let me give a real concrete example here. Social media is something we all wrestle with, right? Screen time and the dopamine addiction to it, all of the process. And there's multiple podcasts on all of that. If we come to our teen, I'm so frustrated. I never get to look at your eyes when you talk to me. You're always on the phone. That's going to shut down communication. If I say I read some recent research about this blue light disturbing our REM sleep at night, what do you think about us and all of us? I'm going to include all of the family here because my job is to help us all be healthy. What do you think about us putting our phones away to charge in a centralized place in the house an hour before bedtime? And you might get some pushback on that. It might be, well, wait a minute. I don't just talk to friends. I ask homework questions. We're texting late night because I've got, my magnet school. We've got all kind of homework. Yeah, I hear you. That's a concern. But it begins to be a part of a co-created conversation and a co-created solution. And that give and take in conversation isn't about you relinquishing power as a parent. It's about hearing their voice so that they then stand up for themselves in the workplace with college professors when they're late on a grade and, need some special consideration because somebody died. They don't get to have those skills magically when they turn 18 unless they practice them. So making that a co-creative process is really, part of I believe, equipping them for the future. And let's face it, you and I didn't know that we were going to be part of the gig economy when we were in high school. No, we didn't know what this was going to look like. And we can't project and know what their future is going to look like either. Right. So what we do know that happens in times of great social change is that these communication skills can serve them for life and can be a mirror for them to know who they are and represent themselves in the world well. It's something you teach, it's something I teach, in my coaching and courses. And it's just really empowering to help teens, tweens and teens,
right.
Be able to talk this way.
Yeah.
I've got a great story I want to share with you about this. My youngest, the equine professional I was telling you about, she was going up for her first job after she graduated, and it was a whole weekend interview process. And so the interview was with an older superintendent, believe it or not, who retired and bought a horse farm, and he was looking for the right barn manager. And so he was touring her of the place, and they were having conversations. And she said, I really love this opportunity. I'm so appreciative of it. She used her iMessages and her affirmations there. And, she's relaying this to me, and I'm just all proud because we've been talking like that for a while, right? And she said, but I feel that, and she used her I feel message, I feel concerned because there's some things that are happening in the horse care that I don't agree with, that I wasn't taught about, and would you be willing, using the unopen-ended question, to examine, implementing these changes over time? And he said, yes. And he was very impressed with how she represented herself. She got the job, and he did make some changes, because it was going to be some money investment and he would have to plan that out. But, these skills serve our kids for life.
Yeah.
And it's such a valuable thing. And who better to practice it with than us? Right. Not only does it create this trust and loving connection, but it really does prepare them for the future.
And I think that's a great example. And do you mind to back up too, just for anybody who's not familiar, like you said, the iMessage, and then following it up with the, would you, the open-ended question? Can you just explain that strategy and how we use that as parents, and so that our children will be able to learn to use it as well?
Sure. In my coaching practice, I've got a stair-step process. We start with affirmations and gratitude so that your child feels seen. Then we move into open-ended questions so that the connection is really fortified. Then we do the active listening where we're mirroring back. Did I hear you right? Is this what you're saying? And they can confirm or deny it. And then we do the little emotional detective work. I'm sensing that you're feeling anxious or scared or, all of that. And then the I messages is, I feel X about Y. I feel, and name that feeling word about and name the specific behavior. Sometimes psychologists get tripped up, and I think, my opinion only, and they use that I message to confront negative behavior, and it gets a bad rap. But that's not the I message I'm talking about. I'm talking about just standing for yourself in the conversation from a feelings level.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
Yeah. So those are great tools.
Yes. And it's something that we all need to be aware of because, like we've said, our children will model what we do. So if we're speaking with them in that way and showing them respect and giving them opportunities to share their thoughts and opinions, they'll learn to do the same with others. So, well, before we run out of time, do you have any other tips on how we as parents can make a direct impact on our kids in preventing mental health issues and then also addressing them when we know that they're present?
Right. First of all, don't be afraid to ask for help if you're concerned. There are wonderful professionals out there, and coaches. And that probably is a good time to talk about what's the difference between therapy and coaching. Therapy looks at how a specific thought or behavior began and how we can fulfill that need now so that it doesn't trip us up. And coaching is a little bit more goal oriented. It's more skills based. So we certainly look at childhood wounds. I'm not saying that we don't, but we see ourselves as fully responsible for that. And the coach is there to mentor you through a growth process with some specific goals in mind. And that can happen individually as a parent. That can happen for teens. There's teen coaching, and that can happen as a family. And that's what I love to do. That's what I get so excited about, is working with parents and teens together so that everybody gets these skills and everybody is using them at the same time and being heard and feeling heard and empowered. And then the whole family dynamic shifts. And it's amazing how quickly that can happen.
Oftentimes it's just a matter of having somebody from the outside part of the conversation, right? I think that then it makes us, I think that makes a big difference because I think it forces us to listen to each other a little bit better because somebody on the outside is hearing this for the first time. And I just think it makes a big difference in our listening abilities, not just say.
Yeah. And, we can trip up those old shame wires that I'm not doing it right. I'm not parenting right. And it's really not about that. It's that the social tides are changing so incredibly much. And we put so much pressure on parents to be all, do all, know all. And there is no way any one person can do that. We're missing a society underneath us. We're missing a family support network underneath us. Even if you're blessed to have a grandparent nearby, right. There were other supports at other times and life was slower. So because we're in this tremendous time of social change, I think everybody needs a coach. I think everybody needs help, just to feel sane in the middle of these shifts.
Right. And if at the end we get out of it that we've been able to, like you did, raise two successful women that are also, a part of your life and friends with you today, even though I'm sure there were times in teens that they didn't always agree with you and didn't always like you, right? The fact that you've come out of that.
But we had the tools to deal with that. It's really powerful to know that nobody's going away and that everybody can walk away feeling loved and heard. And even when we're not necessarily in agreement, that's okay.
Right.
We're different.
Right. Well, Laura, we really appreciate all your insight and your time today. And tell us again where people can find you. And I know you have a great freebie that every parent of a teenager needs to get. Tell us more about that.
Right. And also that these choices start early, right? Remember I said the red shirt or the blue shirt? You can create those open-ended questions early and really deepen your connection with your child, no matter what age. And so that list of 20 open-ended questions is at lauralreagan.com, and it's called 20 Conversation Starters to use with your tweens or teens.
Fantastic. And we'll make sure we link to that in the show notes. So it's super easy for you, if you're listening right now, to be able to go grab that and check out more of what Laura has to offer. Connect with her on social and through her website. Again, Laura, we really appreciate your time today. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. And thanks for doing this and putting this out there for parents.
Yeah, well, our goal was to do this together, right? Because like you said, that the whole conversation, that's what we need, right? We need that support. So that's the goal. Thank you.
Take care.
If you are looking for more ways to build communication skills in your kids, grab our free mini lesson on how to craft a polished and professional speech out of thin air, along with 52 fun prompts so your kids can practice every single week. You can find that along with info about our upcoming public speaking and debate courses for kids at greencommunicationsedu.com.